start with some introductions. My name is Liz Mcgonagall. I'm a Senior Associate Dean of Admission at Bates College, and I've been at the college for around 6 years. I cover a variety of territories, so if you're from Pennsylvania or Colorado or Canada or New Hampshire, I read your application this year. It's nice to virtually meet you and see you. And I work with marketing and communications at the college. And really excited to be with you here tonight. So I will pass it off to Darby to start us off. If you could just share your name, the area that you work in, that would be great.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name's Darby Ray. I use she, her pronouns. I work at the Harward Center for Community Partnerships. I'm also a member of the faculty in the Religious Studies Department. Great to be here.
Wonderful. And we'll pass it off to Darren next.
Hi everyone, Darren Gallant. I'm Associate Dean and Director of the Center for Global Education. The Center for Global Education is international student programs and services and off-campus studies / study abroad.
And now, last but not least, pass it over to Tom.
Thanks, Liz. Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Twist. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I work in the sustainability office, which is very active on campus and works with the student body quite a bit.
So for our participants, this is a real all-star crew. All three of these offices are really unique and interesting. They do things that you might find at other institutions, but there are particular Bates spins on the work that they do, and we'll get into that a little bit as we continue. And these offices, a lot of their work has been nationally recognized, whether it's through our extensive work with Fulbright or our carbon neutrality. So some really nice opportunity for us to have good conversation today about these offices, the offerings they have, and then what makes them distinctive at the college. A few housekeeping items. We will be on for about 50 minutes. This session is for you. We've all heard the spiel about our different offices many, many times, but we are bringing this to you this evening to try to answer some of your questions, to give you a better sense of the Bates community, the culture, the things that we value. So with that in mind, please ask us questions. I've got questions that I have to ask Darren, Darby, and Tom, but we would love to hear from you about the things that are top of mind for you at this moment in time when you're thinking about joining the Bates community or you've already decided to join the Bates community. So at the bottom of your screen, I think we're all very familiar with Zoom by now. We've got a Q&A function. Please use that liberally. All questions are appreciated, and I'll do my best to field them to the speakers. If we don't get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with you. But please feel free to use that Q&A function liberally. You can also ask a question anonymously if you don't feel like having your name attached to it. But we're really hoping that your questions can drive much of this conversation this evening, again, because this time here is for you to gain a better sense of the college and our community. So without further ado, I will ask an intro question for our panelists just to get things started and for our prospective or current students start thinking of your questions. I'm going to start with Darby. We started with you for intros, but we'll jump back into that. When I came to Bates, I wasn't familiar with what community engaged learning was. I had heard about community service. I was less familiar with community engagement as a concept and also the concept of it being tied to your academic experience. So I'm wondering if you could detail a little bit more about what the Harward Center is, what it does in your experience.
Sure, I would love to respond to that. So community engaged learning is basically learning and teaching that incorporates real world partnerships and challenges and projects into the classroom. So at Bates, no matter what you're taking, it could be an astronomy class, a classics class, dance, history, biology, you're likely to have at least one course a year and perhaps more, depending on your major, that is community engaged. And so this is, it looks different in different classes. There might be, so actually Intro to Astronomy is a class where you'd think you're just staring at the sky and not actually engaging with the real world, the on the ground world. But in that class, in lieu of one of the labs, students work together in small groups of 3, and they each, over the course of the semester, each group is kind of digging into one key concept within astronomy. And at the end of the semester, by the time they get to the end of the semester, they've each developed projects, each small group, and the projects have to be designed to translate their sort of high level college learning about this concept within physics and astronomy. And they have to design an interactive learning station for elementary school kids. And then on a Monday night in April, and so far it's always been a beautiful night, they come to our Bates campus with their parents. We have hundreds of little elementary school kids coming, and they have this just amazing, it's called Astronomy Extravaganza, and it is an extravaganza. It's so fun. I mean, I have a great time. I don't have kids that age anymore, so I guess I've become one. But you know, we have just lots of different buildings, and also outside, you know, places where kids can go and engage in these interactive learning stations. So they're building their own telescope, they're learning about, you know, thermodynamics and all sorts of things in really fun ways. And so that's this great opportunity, again, to sort of infuse your own learning with excitement. If you're a Bates student, you're like, okay, I have to master this enough to be able to explain it to my teacher, but also to be able to get, you know, a second grader and their parents involved in it. And so that's just one example. Some are more sustained. That's an example of like a class that would have one project in it. Sometimes they're over the course of the whole semester. But we take a lot of pride at Bates in trying to make sure that we're teaching not only theories, but also what does a theory look like in practice? We're asking the question of what is the point of this great education, of this knowledge? How can it contribute to the questions and the needs of the wider world? And how can we practice what we're learning in the classroom in contexts where our practicing could actually be useful to somebody else? So that's one example of community engaged learning, and then it's just a key part of the Bates curriculum. And so, yeah, thanks.
That's awesome. We have a colleague, Joey, who has a second grader, and he's actually attended the Astronomy Extravaganza and is very obsessed with it. It's really cute. So fun to hear that as an example. And I love hearing these examples of active learning experiences, right? Bates is not a place where you're going to sit and be lectured at. You are tonight, unfortunately, guys. We're zooming at you. But for the most part, there are a lot of opportunities to have these really immersive, engaged experiences and to put your learning into practice. Another area where we definitely see that, I would say, would be with our sustainability work. And Tom, I think you've had quite a bit of experience with students helping them translate their personal and academic passions into some real concrete work that aligns both with their academic experience and with stewarding the institution. Would you be comfortable talking a little bit more about that and your work within sustainability?
Sure. Thanks, Liz. I think, you know, to start off, I wanted to say that I think one of the things that is most unique about Bates is the level to which we trust students to be involved in our sustainability work at every level. So, for example, there's not a single project in the sustainability realm at Bates where the students aren't an integral part of it. And that's a really wonderful thing, both, I think, from my perspective, because the students bring so much to the table, but also it really gives the students a really grounded real world education in terms of sustainability, which is a topic that is constantly changing. And, you know, just a few examples of the projects that students are involved with. We have students writing grants for electric vehicle chargers on campus. We have students working out the financing of some of our larger solar projects. We have students running an organic no-till garden. And those are just a few of the many things that they're doing. So it's exciting to see. And just the last thing I'll say about this is we've found that the students are really interested in doing something real with sustainability at the college. And we've found that the more informed the students are, so I feel like we've taken a different tack than many other places out there, which is we inform the students as much as we can. We give them as much control over their own sustainability. And as a result, it's kind of a win-win. We get a more engaged student body, a more active student body, and one that takes more responsibility for the sustainability of the campus. So it's been a lovely collaboration.
Wonderful. So continuing this theme about active learning, Darren, in your work with Study Abroad, you help to manage a variety of international opportunities for our students where they're able to not just learn in a traditional classroom, but be out there in the wider world, take a break from the Lewiston and Auburn community and experience something different. And I know that in a traditional year, there are multiple ways that Bates students can study abroad. So I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about those different ways that students study abroad and some of the value that students get from learning outside of the traditional campus at Bates.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that question, Liz. Yeah, I think that is one of the things that actually makes Bates so unique is not only the high number of students that participate in study abroad, it's usually around 60% of the junior class, but that's for semester and year study abroad. We also have students who will study abroad during the summer. And then our short term during usually sometime in May also has courses that will travel internationally or in the United States. And those are led by a faculty member or two. And they're usually based around a faculty member's research or interest or partnerships globally. And they'll take 15 to 20 students to Eastern Europe and study theater, or I can only think of theater, London and study theater, but maybe also for a geology trip in Scotland, studying migration in the Dominican Republic. These are all things that have happened in the past, and they change all the time. And that's sort of what's really exciting about them, because you see the academics change as the faculty propose these new courses and come up with them and recruit students for them every year. With the pandemic, this hasn't happened this year or last year, but we're really excited for them to come back in 2022. There are also the opportunity for fall semester abroad programs, which are also faculty driven, where two faculty members from different departments come together, come up with a topic, pick a location, and recruit students to go and have a unique semester study abroad experience from all different class years. And that's a really Bates thing. And it's been in existence, I think, since the 80s. Like Bates has been doing this since for a really long time. And it's a great opportunity for students and faculty to get to know each other really well in a whole different environment for a 3 or 4 month period. So there's plenty to do. There's lots of opportunities for international study. I have a lot of students who graduate having studied abroad maybe 2 or 3 times, which is very unique.
Wonderful. Really quick to see if everyone's here. Raise your hand if you want to study abroad when you go to college. I already did, but I want to see some people. Yep, here we go. Nice. If you want to, throw where you want to go in the chat. It'd be fun to see where people are interested in studying. Darren's got this awesome map of the world behind him, and it's fun to look and see all of the opportunity that exists out there. So great to see that you guys are interested in studying abroad, having those international experiences. Yes, the geology field trips, really cool. Yeah, because that is an area that makes Bates unique. And I think all 3 of these individuals in the departments that they work in, there's a clear thread or theme of this conversation around active learning, engaged learning, being in charge of your learning experience in high school. You're told what classes you have to take and when you have to take them, what you should be learning and how you should be learning them. But when you come to Bates, you have this immense amount of freedom and this opportunity to really engage with the work that you're passionate about studying in a really different and unique way. Darren, I'm wondering if we could just stick with you for a minute in terms of study abroad. If you could share maybe, because sometimes it can feel really theoretical, like maybe some students know of international locations, maybe where their parents went, who knows, or a friend or a sibling. But if you could share maybe examples of 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 abroad experiences that Bates students have had that might be unique or interesting as these guys think about what that might look like for them in the future.
Yeah, and don't mind my dog drinking water in the background. That's what that noise is. Absolutely. And actually someone in the chat wrote the Galapagos, and that is actually a program that we partner with, the Galapagos, where students will go study in Quito to start off, and then they go to the Galapagos for the rest of their time, participating in research, ongoing research and learning in a classroom that is outside, essentially. That's one of my favorites. Students have really been attracted to Iceland lately for the environmental research that they can do there, especially around the Arctic. Mongolia is my favorite program to talk about because it is so unique, and I haven't sent a student there in a couple of years, but hopefully you'll go. I'm talking to you. It's really focused on natural resource management, a really important topic, and most students that go in that program end up learning how to ride a horse for the first time. It's really important to the culture there. Gosh, there's so many options. There's over 200 approved programs on our list, and I'm constantly looking for new locations. Oh, someone's from Mongolia. I want to talk to you. Email me later. I want to know more. I've had students who've learned to scuba dive and count sea turtles, and then others who have been in a classroom in Paris taking courses alongside local students and learning in the French language. So it's it's really up to you. There's lots of options, and we're here to help you choose.
That's great. And just sticking with you for another minute, Darren, a good question about who's able to study abroad and how it works in terms of document status and then also financial aid at the college. Because I know it's an experience that we want to make sure is available to all of our students. But I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about what is available to our student community.
Yeah, there is financial aid available for study abroad for the semester and year, and then also for our short-term and fall semester abroad programs. So most students find that the financial aid package covers everything they need. And we also do advising on scholarships that you can apply for that would be sort of an additional coverage. There's a lot that goes into the financing of study abroad, and we spend time with you at least a year before working on that. There was a question about being undocumented studying abroad. Unfortunately, that's not usually an option. International travel for undocumented or DACA students can be a real inhibitor. We'll see how things go under this new administration. In the past, with help from a lawyer, it has been possible, but that definitely paused for a period of time. We also have domestic off-campus study programs where you can study at another college or university, or you can study at a research lab. You can actually study on a boat in Woods Hole and go around the Caribbean. There's lots of different options. We have a great exchange partnership with Morehouse College, which has been a real benefit for students. And yeah, come talk to us because we can also find other programs out there.
That's great. And I think that highlights also the really personalized nature of the advising that you do in your office to make sure that you're finding a good fit for the student and working with them with their specific circumstances or interests. So that is a really lovely part of the Bates experience, is that it is hyper personalized and we're always willing to think and try new things. So thank you for that question. And thanks, Darren, for that awesome information. So there seem to be a lot of folks who are interested in some type of environmentally focused or sustainability focused international experiences. So we'd love to turn over to Tom for a little bit to provide a snapshot of where Bates stands as a leader in sustainable institutions. We were thrilled to be one of the few colleges that was able to declare carbon neutrality a few years ago. So Tom, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how Bates has become a leader in the sustainability movement, and then what is currently happening on campus to make sure that we continue to be good stewards of the world around us.
Yeah, Liz, thank you so much. Yeah, so to the carbon neutrality question, we get a lot of questions about that and how Bates was able to achieve carbon neutrality. And the quick answer is not easily. Is a very difficult thing to do. We've been working at it for probably in excess of 15 years now. And to give you some idea how difficult it is, just imagine what it would take to make your home carbon neutral. and then multiply it times all the buildings on campus. So it's very difficult. And we mostly got there through three things. One was energy efficiency. I won't talk about that because it's not interesting to anyone besides myself. But it's just what it sounds like, decreasing energy waste and that sort of thing. We have switched these. The second one is renewable. So we're moving towards both renewable energy in terms of electricity and renewable energy in terms of our heating plant. We're using a completely new wood-based liquid fuel to heat the majority of our campus. And we're the only school nationwide right now that is using that fuel, which is very exciting. And then the third piece I think is the most important, and that's the culture piece. And I did allude to that a little bit before. The students, again, are very much the driver in terms of sustainability. And we view them as real partners in getting us to where we think we should go. And in many cases, which I'll talk about in a second, they are the ones deciding where we should go. So having hit our carbon neutrality goal in 2019, we are now looking at what the next decade will hold. And most folks like the UN and the IPCC, which is the I almost said interplanetary, Intergovernmental Climate Change Council, they have really said that this coming decade is kind of a make or break decade for sustainability. And so we are engaging the students and asking them what they'd like to see from the college in terms of goals over the next 10 years, knowing that this is going to be maybe the most important 10 years in, not to sound hyperbolic, but in our lifetimes, maybe in everyone's lifetime. It's very impactful decade. So we are involving the students, and they are helping us craft our 2030 goals to put us on the right track, basically. So thanks, Liz. That's a good question.
And Tom, there was a follow-up question. Would you be able to talk a little bit about the plot?
Oh, yeah. So the plot is actually an acronym, and it means people learning outside together. They actually came up with the plot first and then filled in the acronym sort of piece later, but we'll take it. So the plot is the student garden, and it's not brand new, but it's pretty new. It's only about 3 years old, and it was started by students from something called a green grant. So Bates has these green grants for students, and it's $2,000 to any student with a good sustainability idea. And we select sort of the best ideas, we fund those ideas, and then what I think is interesting is those students then become the project manager for that idea. So they make their idea become reality. And the garden started with one of these green grants. And it's about a 1.5 acre plot. And like I mentioned before, it's organic, it's completely no-till, it's student run, and all those veggies go to our dining commons and also the local food bank. And what's nice is, I kept mentioning the word real before. It's a real working garden. It's not like a feel-good type gesture. It's the real deal. And they send hundreds of pounds of produce each year to both those places. So it's a wonderful place.
That's great. Thanks, Tom. It's also a really peaceful and beautiful spot as well on campus. It's kind of tucked away. It's a nice, if you need a little respite, it's a good little spot to hang and get away from the world. So thank you. So Darby, earlier, kind of shifting gears, you talked about community engaged learning, and that is just one small facet of what the Harward Center for Community Partnerships does. I'm hoping you can share a little bit more about the other layers that the Harward Center is engaged with as they work with both the Bates community and the Lewiston Auburn community writ large, specifically around extracurricular engagement. I think a lot of the students, as someone who reads applications, so many of the students that I get to connect with through this process have experience doing some type of community-based work outside of the classroom. So I would love to hear about what that looks like at the college.
Sure, yeah, thanks. Yes, so community engagement is really core to the Bates DNA. And so it kind of proliferates. You really can't name a part of the student experience that doesn't have access to and usually taps into in robust ways into some form of engagement with the off-campus community. We're really fortunate to be located where we are in a super interesting small city that's very accessible to our students and where there are a ton of projects and partners of work to be done and partners who love to work with Bates students. So beyond the curriculum, which I mentioned earlier, what we've tried to do, because Bates students come with this appetite to do this work, and because they know we're all about it, and they're like, yes, that's where I want to go, partly because of that. And so we try to make sure there's access at every possible point. So when you come to Bates, you will be in a little first year center in your residence hall, and you'll have a small community of folks that you get to know. Right away. I'm hoping you can still hear me.
We can
Can you
still,
hear me?
Darby, we can still hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just having a day with my devices. Anyway, so one of the things that happens in the first year center is that every first year center engages together in a community engaged project. So right from the very beginning, starting with where you live, you're going to have access to community engagement. There we go. I got myself plugged in there. Sorry about that. And then if you join a student club, and everybody joins at least one club, every single club has not only the typical leadership positions that you expect, like a president and a treasurer, but every single student club has a community liaison, a leadership position where the student's job is to connect that club in some form of positive community engagement with the off-campus community. So like name a club at Bates and I can share what they're doing. So for example, the photography club partners with a low-income family-based housing community in Lewiston, and they take portraits, family portraits, and of the families, because you don't always get those like nice where everybody's dressed up and coordinated and ready for a family portrait. So our students take those portraits, and then our students write a small grant to the Harward Center to be able to get funds to be able to then provide, an 8x10 to every family of their portrait. And so that's just one example, but you wouldn't necessarily think of the photography club as engaging in the off-campus community, but you can do that through your clubs. You do it through teams. Every sports team, every athletic team has a community liaison. And right now, for example, all athletes in every sport are working on a new program that our head football coach has started with the Harward Center called MOVE, and it's all about mentoring local youth. And so it's our student athletes mentoring local athletes in K-12 athletes, not in their sport, but in things like character and leadership and communication, and all kinds of self-efficacy skills like that. We also have leadership programs through the Harward Center. So, you can just in your co-curricular time say, I really want to really dig in around an issue that I care about, whether that's public health, legal studies, all kinds of, we have a lot of focus on criminal justice, mass incarceration, reentry services, certainly environmental and sustainability, food justice, food security, all those kinds of issues. So again, you name an issue, we have partners and we have access points, whether that's through the curriculum or through the co-curriculum. We also have summer programs. This past January, because of COVID, we wound up starting our winter term in February instead of January. So we were able to have 27 students who just wanted to spend their January doing something, and they worked in small teams and they each had an issue. And their job was to create a story map or other form of kind of digital introduction or orientation to this issue in this community. So we had students working on food justice, on immigration, on criminal and justice reform, all those kinds of things. And they were able to create new tools, either for people in the off-campus community to use or for us to use on the Bates campus to help orient and inform Bates students about how they can get involved in these issues off campus.
I'm going to throw in the link, the story map for the food communities. That was really fun to see.
Oh, yeah.
Great visualization. So I just put that in the chat for folks. And just as a reminder, throw your questions in the Q&A. I can ask questions all night long of these wonderful folks, but we want to make sure if you have something you're really passionate about in high school that you'd like to see if you can continue in college, or something you're nervous about or excited for, make sure to ask questions in the chat. We want to answer those. Darby, if we could just stick with you for a moment, especially since your picture is perfect now. We're talking about our engagement with the community, and I know some of our students have had the opportunity to physically be in Lewiston and Auburn, but most have not. And for me, Lewiston and Auburn was a tremendous draw to come and work at the college. I loved the idea of being at a liberal arts institution that was a part of the community, that was connected to the community, that wasn't kind of off to the side, but was really engaged in a very intentional way that was very two-way street. It wasn't like a, hey, we're here to do X, Y, and Z. So for those folks who haven't been to campus or maybe just drove through and didn't get a sense, could you share what makes Lewiston and Auburn such a unique and special place for the college to be located, especially when we think about community engaged work?
Yes. So I think the location of a college is something that we often don't think that much about. Sometimes it's like, oh, it's close or far from home, right? That's the location we think of. And I think that location can make a huge difference to a student's undergraduate experience, because I mean, you want to have access to things that you're used to in your life. And we certainly do have that here. We have movie theaters and Chipotle and blah, 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 right? But we're in this super interesting small city. It's a post-industrial city that was, originally occupied before it was a city by the Wabanaki people, who are still making very important contributions in the state of Maine. And then it was sort of settled by Franco-Americans and Italians, like waves of immigrants. And then more since the year 2000, we've had another big wave of immigrants from various African nations. And so even though you think of Maine and you think of maybe a predominantly white state, and it is a predominantly white state, let's be clear, but Lewiston and Auburn are tremendously diverse. Our students are always really surprised by that. At the high school, there are 24 plus languages spoken. We have mosques, and we have so much diversity that you wouldn't necessarily expect in a small city in the Northeast in Maine. And then we have also a sort of hard knock history. This is a town a city that is largely working class. We have a lot of challenges, but also a sort of gritty resourcefulness in, we're going to figure this out together. And Bates students are part of that together. And so our location gives our students ample opportunities to get to work and to apply what they're learning in their classes in ways that really make a difference. So right now, for example, in Lewiston, we're all on the edge of our seats to find out if we're going to get a $30 million grant from Housing and Urban Development to help revitalize our downtown. And we're the only small city in the US that has ever made it to the finals. And we have a really good chance. We're one of 6 vying for this. And people think we're going to make it. And the whole thing about this grant is that the people who live in the neighborhood that needs the revitalization have had to guide the process and create the vision and the programs and everything. And our Bates students, they don't live in that neighborhood. We're very close to this downtown neighborhood, but what they've been able to do is host focus groups and collect the data and analyze the data and summarize the data and create all kinds of ways of presenting the data for this grant application. And our sociology students have worked, and our environmental studies students, and so students from lots of different disciplines and lots of volunteer students and co-curricular students have participated in this. So if we get this grant, it's going to revitalize our downtown, but it's also going to do it in a way that isn't gentrifying. It's not displacing people. It's working for social justice. It's keeping the people on the ground in the center of their own lives and getting to define their own lives, and Bates students as support characters, playing support roles. And I think that's the spirit of this community. It's a scrappy, resourceful community. It has a really interesting arts and culture scene happening, but it's also a place where it's not already cool and done with. Like, it's a place where you can get in there and get to work and make it happen. One way during COVID, can I say one more thing, Liz? Okay, one way during COVID that our students have really gotten involved is through our monthly art walk. So typically, art walk happens downtown on the last Friday, final Friday of every month, but only during the quote unquote temperate months. I mean, it's basically a spring and summer thing. But when everything had to shut down because of COVID, we shifted art walk to virtual art walk. And what that's meant is it's happened through the whole academic year, including the winter or intemperate months. And Bates students have been able to participate by creating short videos of themselves, reciting their poetry, or doing, dance, or performing music, or doing monologues from theater, or creating a video of themselves doing printmaking. And so they've been able to share their art with this really, with 2,000 people, just on a Friday night. And that's been a really terrific way to participate in the community, even during COVID.
Thank you, Darby. That's so wonderful. And it's great to have those specific examples, because we say, like, our location is great and our community is great, but it's really nice to see, to have those really helpful examples. In the chat, I just threw up a YouTube link for the most recent art walks. We have a Bates student who I believe performed for that, but you can go onto the LA Art Walks page and see some really incredible sharing of people's passions in art through that. So really helpful. A quick plug for folks who would like to dig into more about our community and our values. On the Den, under the resources tab, we have these fabulous videos that the orientation team usually uses, but they've offered them up to us this year early, and they talk about community and sense of place, values that are really important to us. There's one on the state of Maine. So if you'd like to get to know a little bit more about the community and culture that Darby is speaking to, I would really recommend going and checking those videos out. They're relatively short. Darby, you're featured in one or two of them, but it's another nice way to get to know the college. So you can find that on the Den. Thank you so much. I always get the chills when I hear about the connections between students and the community, because it feels really powerful. And I think, and I don't just think, I know this is why Bates students are so successful when they graduate, because they've had these real world experiences. They've been presented with real world challenges, and they've tackled them during their time at the college. So they're ready to be engaged citizens post-graduation. So shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to turn back to Darren and talk kind of more about the specifics of how you actually end up studying abroad. So I think for a lot of folks, I can speak for myself, the whole concept was incredibly overwhelming. I didn't know if it was for me. I didn't know if it was possible. So I'm just wondering if you could talk through the process at Bates for supporting students who are interested in having an international experience.
Yeah, gosh, I hope it's not too complicated. There's staff in the Center for Global Education, myself included, that are there to make it less complicated. Bates is a great program in that we try to reduce the barriers to study abroad. So you'll see that a lot of STEM majors will study abroad, a lot of athletes, a lot of underrepresented students, they will study abroad, and that may not be true at other institutions. And one of the ways that we do that is at some schools, they will make you apply to get approval to study abroad from the school. And for us, you register. It's a difference in terms. You're just signing up that you're interested. And we also have a lower GPA requirement than most schools would have for study abroad. And that allows more students to consider the opportunity. So the process really starts during the summer before your sophomore year, which, I mean, sounds early, but you're planning to be away for up to a full year, 4 months, but maybe up to a year. So, we start reaching out. You'll start hearing from your different major departments or programs about, getting into the program. In September, we have a study abroad fair. And then we have partner programs that will offer information sessions on campus. You'll see me going around, handing out flyers, being like in classes, doing different information sessions for sophomores. And then registration opens in October and closes sometime in February. And we do have a deadline because you also then need to apply to your program. So that's just the Bates stuff. Pretty simple though. You explain to us why you want to take on this new endeavor and study in another location, and you fill out a form to make sure you can graduate, because that's really important. We want you to come back and be able to graduate. And then we help you apply to your program or your school abroad. They're often based in the US, but they operate globally. And those are pretty simple applications as well, but lots of different questions will come up, and that's why you send me an email and say, what is a homeschool nomination form? And I'll say, I'll fill it out for you. Different things like that will happen. And then while you're abroad, we try to not be in touch as much as possible unless there's something going on. And then you'll hear from me. And I always say, we do meetings with the students before they leave to go abroad to help you get ready for the experience. And I always say, if I email you, it means it's something important, because otherwise I'm not going to email you. Like, I want you to go and be in the place and leave Bates behind for a little bit. We'll still be here and we'll be ready to welcome you back, but go do your thing and then tell us about it when you come back. So it's a long process. It takes some research, it takes some thinking, some goal planning, but you have staff and you actually have other upper class students to help you through that. I think that's one of the things that we actually rely on a lot, is the upper class students who have gone through the experience really help the sophomores like figure it out for themselves. And what I've been really impressed is that the returning students won't say, I went here, you should go here too. They'll say, I went here, this is why. It worked for me for these reasons. You can consider or not, it's up to you. Because everyone has sort of an individual experience that will come out of an off-campus study opportunity. I can keep talking, so you better stop me.
No, it's great. I think because I do think that study abroad can feel like, yeah, I want this, but what does it actually look like? And how do I actually make it happen? And yeah, just to hear that trajectory is really helpful. And then we also assist with students once they come back to, and getting comfortable, which is another really important layer to the process. So it's, I think, really helpful to have those details. So in the interest of time, we've got a couple of minutes left. So for student attendees, please feel free to throw your questions out there. We've got a great one from Mamadou that we'll get to. I'm saving yours for the end. But I'd love to turn it over to Tom. So Tom, you've been worked in the state of Maine for a long time. You're an adventurer. You've explored the state. What made you decide to come and work at Bates? You had a pretty exceptional job before this, but what was it about Bates, the job, that drew you to the college? And related to that, I think you've touched on this, but any other elements that you feel like make the institution or the student community special?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had heard about Bates has a really good reputation for sustainability, and I know some alums that are my age, and they imparted to me that Bates students are very nice, which I thought was cool. And however, my reality at Bates has exceeded that expectation, I feel like. The students, I am continually impressed with the students. Well, I'll leave the anecdote for later.
No, go throw the anecdote in.
Okay. All right. It was my very first day at Bates. I had no Bates gear whatsoever. It was a very snowy day because it's Maine. And I was helping shovel the stairs. And every single student that passed me said thank you. And, they didn't know I was the sustainability guy. They didn't know even that I worked at Bates. I was just some random bearded dude that was shoveling. And everyone was so appreciative. And I thought to myself, where am I? And it's been true, really, these 5 years that I've been here. The Bates students are remarkable, I feel, in that they're very much in the, they want to help the world in a huge way, in a real way. And that really shines through in everything that they do. I think that's what's so unique. It's just amazing to see that every student that I've interacted with, it seems like their primary reason for being at Bates is to learn how to help more effectively. And I think that's, well, A, makes my job a lot easier, but it's also just it's a delight to be around, so.
That's great. I had a similar experience when I came up for my interview at Bates. So yeah, the Bates Nice, I think, is really wonderful. And Tom, I think it also draws faculty and staff that feel that way, as well as exemplified by this panel here of people who are curious about the world, want to make it a better place. So it's not cheesy, it's real, and it's pretty cool to be a part of a community that challenges one another seriously, but we're stepping in a similar direction, which can feel powerful. It's a great community to be a part of. So I'd love to ask the same question of both Darren and Darby. Maybe Darren, for you, why did you end up at Bates? What made you decide to join this community?
I was really excited by the existing study abroad program. It's nationally renowned. I had heard of it before. I really wanted to be a part of it. I was very curious how this small school in Maine was sending students all over the world in large numbers and doing it in a way that you could see representation throughout the student body for those that are going abroad. I really wanted to figure that out. And now being here, I understand that a lot of it has to do with how international education and a global perspective is built into the curriculum. It's built into the community. It's built into how we think about like what the Bates mission philosophy is that what Liz has sort of been capturing here is like the doing good and doing it where you are locally, but also globally. And so I've seen that with the students, and that really drew me to coming to Bates. And then what everyone says about how the community is great is true. Like I've been at Bates for 2.5 years, and it's been a really wonderful experience meeting students and seeing all the amazing things that they're passionate about and how excited they are to tell me about them, because I want to hear about them as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Darby, we'll head over to you now for your why Bates moment.
Yeah, I actually did not apply to Bates. I wasn't looking for a job. I was happily teaching religious studies at a small liberal arts college somewhere else. And I got a call one day from a headhunter, somebody who wanted me to apply for this job. And, I honestly didn't know much about Bates. And I have to acknowledge that originally I had it confused with a different small liberal arts college in Maine, and I wasn't interested as a result because I thought it was a place that was located in this kind of sweet, posh little town with lots of coffee shops and whatever. And I was like, that's not where I want to, I want to be in a place that is a little more real than that. And so when I visited, I was like, oh, this is a community where at an elite small liberal arts college where you can get an elite education, but in a profoundly non-elitist environment, this is the perfect combination of things. And the other thing that really attracted me was the philosophy of community engagement that the college already had, and that I think we've even deepened in the time that I've been here, which I'm now in my 9th year at Bates. But we've talked about Bates students as having sort of an appetite for helping, and I think that's true. And the Bates Nice is true, and really importantly true. But also, I think a lot of students who come to colleges like Bates have had experiences of community service that have been really powerful for them, but sometimes they're also part of a problematic paradigm in which privileged people get to define what those who are lesser advantaged need, and get to sort of dump their goodness on unsuspecting poor people. And that's really what it looks like a lot of times. And really, frankly, I grew up with that model. It was really powerful for me. But I have since realized that there are actually better, more authentic, more principled, ethical ways of being in relationship. And that at Bates, we're actually trying to problematize even some of the stuff that has felt good, because it contributes to ways of being that maintain hierarchies and that maintain unjust structures and systems. And so at Bates, we don't actually even use the language of community service. It's good language, but what we're trying to do is help students think about, we're not just serving people who are needy, and we're not needy. We're actually recognizing that the best kind of relationship is actually a relationship where you come together to work together and co-define problems and possibilities and possible solutions. And that as 18 to 22-year-olds, you're so ambitious and you bring so much to the table. And you need to sit back and listen to the people on the ground whose lives are at stake, and you need to listen deeply and be apprentices. And so sometimes you take the lead and sometimes you sit back. And so our model is one of co-creation, of partnership, of collaboration, of recognizing the wisdom and the strengths of people whom the rest of the world might think of as only in need of things. But in fact, they have so much to offer, and they wind up being co-educators of our students. And that's so powerful. I don't know if Liz, if you can put into the chat, there's a recent story about Hannah Mckenzie, who's graduating this year, and she received a Watson Foundation fellowship. And it's a super amazing accolade for her and an opportunity for her. But she's been working for 4 years in deep partnership with our refugee and immigrant community in Lewiston, Auburn. And she has done it with such attunement to the power dynamics, to the fact that she's a white, able-bodied, hyper-educated young person working with people for whom English is a second language, and who may have experienced trauma in their home countries, and all sorts of things. And yet what she has found is that she has been powerfully transformed by their wisdom and their strengths and the things that they have to offer. And so at Bates, we welcome all these amazing experiences and the desires to help, and we're going to push back against some of the structures and systems that are actually not life-giving over the long haul for everybody. And I think that's a powerful commitment that the college has made, and it attracted me to come here because all schools have community service programs, but they don't all have this kind of really deep commitment where it's integrated into the curriculum and the co-curriculum at every phase along the way, this deep commitment to working collaboratively to make a world that we can all share and live together in. So that's what drew me to Bates.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. So we are close to time, so we'll just wrap it up right now. But I want to say such a big thank you to Darby, Darren, and Tom for sharing your expertise, your experience, and a little bit more about your personal reasons for being at the college. Hopefully for our admitted students, this was helpful for you as you try to get a sense of this place that you may already be calling home or hope to call home in the future. Would love to just share a couple of parting thoughts. So if you have a question that wasn't answered, please feel free to shoot me an email. Maybe you didn't want to throw it in the chat, but I'm available. And if you just go to the admission website, my face is there. So feel free to shoot me an email with questions that you might have. Join us on the Den. Darren's got his own study abroad global education group there. We have a sustainability group. We have one on the Harward Center. So there's opportunity to gain some more resources, to connect with other students who might have similar interests to you, and then to connect with current Bates students who have similar interests to you as well. So if you'd like to connect with a student who's deeply engaged in community engagement work, you can find them, a current Bates student, on the Den and have a really nice casual conversation with them. I'd also just like to highlight that this session and all of our sessions are posted on our YouTube page, our Bates College YouTube. So check those out if you missed anything. And then finally, we've got a bunch of really cool upcoming events. So if you're still trying to get a sense of Bates or want to connect with more community members that you'll see next year, we've got a club showcase happening on Monday, some academic spotlights on the arts, foreign languages, the social sciences, and the humanities. We have one on the support network at Bates, which I think can be really helpful and informative. And Ask Me Anything with Bates admission leaders. It's a time for like last minute questions. And then my personal favorite, But Why Bates? So you got a little taste of it tonight with Darren, Tom, and Darby, but we'll be hearing from other students and community members about why they chose the college. So thank you all so very much for your time. A huge thank you to our panelists for your time and energy during this extraordinarily busy time of year. And to all of our attendees, thanks for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your morning, noon, or night, wherever you are calling in from. Thanks, everyone.